Hello everyone, so this is the lecture 1. So this is going to be the first lecture of the first week of February. So in this lecture we're gonna, first I want to talk about, kind of give you an idea of what this course is going to be about. And then we're gonna get into the first chapter of the book, the textbook. So let's get right in. Come on. Alright, so we're gonna talk about, we're gonna ask ourselves, what is it? Art, what is it? What do you think that it is? Or why is it important? Or what do we do with it? So before we get into the first chapter, I'd like to talk about what is art and why is it important? And how we can appreciate it. After all, this is, art appreciation is the course title. So first thing first, I want you to ask yourselves, what do you think of art? Do you think it is important at all? If so, why or why not? And when was the last time you saw an art? And most importantly, what do you think art is? And it seems like there's never a definitive answer when it comes to art. And I don't think there has been one for the very fundamental question of what is art? When you hear the word art, what comes in your mind? Do you think of works like these, the one and only Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, or this amazing masterpiece of masterpieces, one of my favorite of all time, The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa by Bernini? Or maybe this absolutely sublime painting done by Sandro Botticelli? Well, they all are art, alright. Oh, that was a tongue twister. Well, no one will argue that these are artworks, and these are beautiful artworks. But let's take a look at these examples. Okay, so this is an artwork called Fountain by Marcel Duchamp, one of the most important names of the history of art. Fountain was exhibited in 1917 in New York City for an exhibition staged at the Grand Central Palace by the Society of Independent Artists, and it is now one of the most important collection of Philadelphia Museum of Art. It is one of the most important work of art of history, I'll say. And it being at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, it attracts thousands and millions of visitors each year. But what is it? It is a urinal turned upside down with a fake artist's signature on it. Did he even make the urinal at least? Of course not. So, how is this art? And why is it so important today? What about this? It's a relatively newer work. It's a banana, right? Duct taped to the wall, entitled Comedian. And this is an artwork that was exhibited in Art Basel, Miami Beach in 2019, one of the largest art fair in the world. And it made the headlines when another artist ate this banana and called that act as a performance art, calling it Hungry Artists. I mean, obviously the banana was replaced with another one, but it makes you wonder, what is going on here? Something doesn't seem right, right? And guess how much this thing was sold for? Well, it was sold for $120,000. Wow, what in the world, right? So how do we come from works like these, the absolute masterpieces, to these? I mean, I'm not saying these are masterpieces, but you see the difference between these works to these works. Well, so what in the world happened here? How are we even supposed to understand artworks like these so that we can all agree that these count as art? Well, to fully understand an artwork, you must understand every aspect of it. You cannot judge an artwork without knowing pretty much everything about it. So, let's use an example that is just a little bit easier to digest, shall we? So, anyone recognize this painting? Maybe, maybe not. How about the name? And Pablo Picasso, the name that we all heard of. This is one of the most famous work of him, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, meaning the young ladies of Avignon. And, let's take a look at this painting. And let's just be honest and ask yourself, do you think you can paint like this? I bet that some of you will probably say, yeah, maybe. I mean, this work does not look like it requires that much of a painterly skills, and its beauty is very subjective. But this is one of the most important paintings of all time, and one of the Picasso's most well known for. Our dear Pablo here didn't always paint it like this. He used to paint like this. Pablo Picasso was born in 1881 to two artistic parents whom taught him formal drawing techniques. And he mastered the oil painting from an early age. So these paintings, yeah, I mean, these are beautiful painting. And he also received excellent education in art, attending one of the most prestigious art schools of that time. So I bet a lot of you cannot say, oh, even I can do that, alright, to these paintings. But you might be saying, well, maybe I can do that. So does my 14-year-old nephew. To this painting. Compared to the previous painting, this painting looks much more difficult to execute. But why is Pablo Picasso here? He's more well known for this painting than this. To fully appreciate an artwork, you must understand the artist, their personal and professional lives, the social, cultural, and political environment of their time, or the time their inspiration comes from. So let's break it down one by one. And we are going to analyze Pablo Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. The Pablo Picasso, born in 1881, to an artist family, his father, whom eventually became a professor at an art school, gave art lessons to Picasso since his early age. He showed his talent as a painter at a young age, and he expressed his exceptional painterly skills during his early age, through his more realistic style paintings. So the left one, titled First Communion, which was painted in 1896, which makes Picasso painted when he was 15 years old. To the right, a portrait of his mother, and was painted during the same year when he was 15 years old. A talented painter, right? I bet that not a lot of us, including myself, can say that, oh, I can do that. I mean, even today. So, but he wasn't exactly a good student though. When his family moved to Barcelona, he started to attend one of the most prestigious art school in the area. Even though he was too young to be accepted, he got in anyway due to his extraordinary skills. Despite all that, Pablo did not like the strict rules and formalities of the school, so he began to skipping classes and started to painting the streets of Barcelona. And when he was 16 years old, he moved to Madrid and attended Royal Academy of San Fernando. Sorry, I found like a little typo there. However, he did not like the schools this time either. He particularly didn't like the school's focus on the traditional classical painting subjects and techniques. And once again, Pablo Picasso found himself skipping classes to wander the city and painted what he observed: gypsies, beggars, and prostitutes, and among other things, which was considered highly unacceptable by the rules of classical painting. So he had his rebellious nature in him since the very young age. At the turn of the 20th century, he moved to Paris, the center of European art at that time. There he was exposed to other artists such as Toulouse-Lautrec and Munch, whom he had a huge inspiration from. So he started to develop his own styles, undergoing several changes, influenced by both personal life and his contemporaries, meaning the guys that he was hanging out with. During his early career, he suffered from depression due to the death of his close friend, which had a huge impact on his painting style. This period, our historians like to call it the Blue Period. During this period, he painted scenes of poverty, isolation, and anguish, almost exclusively in shades of blue and green, alluding the artist's emotion and psychological hardship that he was going through. While he was living in Paris, he was constantly surrounded by other artists and their works. He found strong influence from Toulouse-Lautrec and Munch, and he was constantly interacting with avant-garde artists such as Henri Matisse and Braque, whom often explored bold and experimental styles. Now you see the connection, right? On the left, Henri Matisse, the internationally renowned painter during Picasso's career in Paris, had a huge influence on his style. So you see the Henri Matisse work here, and then the Les Demoiselles d'Avignon right here. So now we have to take a look at Matisse, of course. So Matisse, a Fauvist painter, was heavily inspired by his fascination of exotic artifacts, which he often encountered during his habitual visits to different museums. Especially, he had a fascination on African arts. He had likely encountered African sculptures such as these at an exhibition, and he also went on a trip to Africa in 1906 to follow his passion in the culture. So according to Gertrude Stein, an American writer living in Paris at the same time, she's the one who wrote the famous "The Rose is a Rose is a Rose is a Rose," by the way. And Stein wrote an account of Matisse's 1906 purchase of a small African sculpture, which he showed to Picasso. Slide. So one thing led to another. Now Picasso, surrounded by artifacts from Africa and all around the world, in his own studio in 1908. And his close friend, Braque, also had a lot of cool and exotic stuff on his wall as well. And it seems like during this time, collecting exotic artifacts from different cultures was a cool thing to do among the intellectuals. Well, I mean, we do the same kind of things these days, right? We have our posters and things like that. So I guess this was the what artist was doing back then. So now let's get back to the painting that we've been talking about. So now you see the connection, right? This African mask and some of the faces we can kind of relate to the form, the look of it. Let's go a little bit closer. And this particular lady right here, lady on the bottom right, which is right there, is the you can see the similarity from the African mask here and to this face right here. And this lady right here. Now you see the similarities here. So it is evident that Picasso was influenced by African art. So just to fully appreciate this one painting, I mean, we had to go through quite deep, right? Picasso's life, our history, different cultures, and the origin of his influences and his contemporaries' influences, which was Henri Matisse in this case. But believe me, there is a lot more to this painting. We just did a crash course version of it. So if you were to really go down, and start investigating this painting, oh, you can write a 20-page research paper easily. So what I wanted to, the reason that I did this is that what we just did gives you an idea of what and how we should see and perceive art. We cannot just judge an art by its qualities through the lens of today. So you must understand every aspect of its creator, origin, and much more. So this is what we just did is going to be what this course is all about, how to perceive and appreciate art. In order to do that, we have to break it down one by one and start learning one by one. So, which brings us to chapter 1, Living with Art. So I really strongly suggest that you read the textbook, because all my course material is made based on the textbook, and then I add a little bit I add more examples here and there. So reading the each chapter every week will really help you with studying. So I strongly suggest you to do that. So in chapter 1, we're gonna look at recognizing why artists make art, and then explaining how artists create their works. And these two chapters, and these two, we are going to be looking at it later on. So let's dive into recognizing why artists make art. We make art because it is a human thing to do. The impulse for art, the reason why we make art. So what motivated humans, I'm talking about humans back in 30,000 years ago, what motivated these prehistoric humans to make this earliest form of art? I mean, no society that we know of in human history has lived without some form of art. The impulse to make and respond to art appears to be as deeply ingrained in us as the ability to learn language, part of what sets us apart as humans. So, where does the urge come from, and what purposes does it serve? For answers, let's take a look at some of the oldest works yet discovered. Discovered in 1994, the Chauvet Cave is one of hundreds of caves in Europe whose walls are decorated with images created during the Upper Paleolithic era, and radiocarbon dating confirmed that this is at least 32,000 years ago. So the galleries and chambers of the cave are filled with over 300 depictions of animals such as lions, mammoths, rhinos, and cave bears, etc., as well as palm prints and stenciled silhouettes of human hands. These handprints are made with charcoal, naturally tinted red, yellow clays, and black minerals served as a pigment. They were ground to a powder with stone mortars, then mixed with a liquid that bonds them into paint. Usually blood, animal fat, and calcium-rich cave water were often used as binders. These particular handprints are made through spraying pigment through a hollow reed. So when these paintings were first discovered during the late 19th century, scholars, suggested that they had been made purely for pleasure during times of rest from hunting and other survival activities. But, their location in deep and hard to reach areas seemed to work against that notion. So for these image makers to have gone through such trouble to doodle, it must not been a doodle. It must been, some kind of important. Their work must have been, meaningful to them. So, other scholars held that the images were a form of magic to ensure success in hunting, and they began to look past individual images to consider each cave as a purposefully structured whole. So this idea had led to the suggestion that these paintings were used in rituals conducted by religious specialists. This and all this, but the most fascinating thing about all this is the ability to make images is very uniquely human. Let's take a look at this one. Anyone know the name of this? You've probably seen this before, right? It's called Stonehenge, a remaining of an ancient structure located in south of England. It is consisted of several concentric circles of megalith meaning a large prehistoric stones, created in several phases, beginning around 3000 BCE. BCE, which is the newer term for before Christ, BC. So we are now living in 2021 AD, which is replaced with CE, Common Era. So 3000 BCE would be 5021 years ago. So it must have been taken those people a lot of time to construct this. I mean, this was 5,000 years ago, and those rocks looks very heavy. And remember, this is a very, very long time ago. And not only moving those stones must have been hard, each stone is carefully shaped by stone hammers to be fitted with others. So that makes us to wonder why. What reason and for what purposes did they make this? Recent research confirmed that the monument marks as a graveyard, perhaps that of a ruling dynasty. Around 240 cremated remains appeared to have been buried there over a span of some 500 years. Some argue that this was used as a religious complex for funerary rituals. Well, we know another ancient barrier structure that was way overkill. Anyone can guess what that is? Is this the Pyramid of Giza? The largest one in the center was constructed around 25 excuse me, give me 1 second. I was sneezing. The largest one was constructed around 2580 BCE, so that is around 4,500 years ago. So what is certain is that these structures held a very important meaning for the people who built it. Otherwise, they would have not gone through all this, trouble. For us, it stands as a compelling example of how basic is our urge to create meaningful order and form to structure our world so that it reflects our ideas. So this is just another place where art begins. Let's take a look at this one. It is a vessel. Created in Neolithic China around 2500 BCE. As the human technology advanced, domestication of animals and crops became a crucial part of their life. They transitioned from hunt and gather nomad lifestyle to being farmers. And being a farmer and also settling on one location for a long period of time made them needing containers like this. So people discovered that fire could harden certain kinds of clay and make this kind of a ceramic works. And this technological discovery had resulted in artifacts like this example right here. Yet, now this isn't just ordinary vessel. Much of the world's oldest pottery seems to go far beyond that, out of their practical requirements. Great care and skill have gone into making these utilitarian items pleasing to the eyes. So here is the third place for the origins of art, the urge to explore aesthetic possibilities of new technology. To construct meaningful images and forms, to create order and structure, to explore aesthetic possibilities, these characteristics seem to be part of us, part of our nature as human beings. So the next lecture, we're going to talk about what do artists do. So far, we've been looking at why the artists make art, but in the next lecture, we're going to talk about what artists do. So this is going to be the second part of the chapter 1. So I suggest that you take a look at that, and then I'll see you guys on the next lecture.